My story with my wife started quite typically. We met at a friend's birthday party and started dating soon after. Fast forward 8 months and we got married. A year later, our son was born. Olivia was a school teacher, but as soon as our baby was born, she decided to devote herself entirely to him. Of course, she also took care of herself by visiting the shops and beauty salons, which I didn't mind at all because, let's face it, she was gorgeous and I loved her very much. We were financially secure. Olivia grew up in a modest family of 4 brothers and a sister. My parents, who had already retired, owned a small building materials store. Being the only son, I have been involved in the family business for quite a long time. Then, when our son turned 1 year old, a tragedy occurred. My parents were in a car accident. They didn't survive. It was a nightmare, a blow that I could barely survive. The grief was unbearable, but somehow I managed to cope, partly thanks to the support of my family. Olivia and I have lived together for 7 wonderful years, and I cherished every moment. Life carried on, and one day, I was in the store when I suddenly heard shouting from the sales floor. I rushed out of my office, and what I saw stopped me dead in my tracks. A drunk man had grabbed my senior consultant, Harper, by the hair and was dragging her toward the exit. Then he kicked her hard in the stomach. Without thinking, I rushed over and grabbed him by the collar. The guy, completely wasted, swung a punch at me, but I wasn't about to let that slide. I'd been into boxing during my youth, and I even held a sportsmaster title back in the day. I took a swing, and down he went, unconscious. An ambulance was called right away, but that's when everything started to spiral out of control. Turns out, this guy was Harper's abusive ex-husband. She'd fled from him after filing for divorce. What made things worse was that he wasn't just any guy. He was a law enforcement officer in a high position. 2 days later, he passed away in intensive care. I was worried, of course, but at the same time, I knew that any man with a shred of dignity would have done the same in that situation. Despite the witness testimonies and other factors, I ended up being sentenced to 3 years in prison. It was a shock to everyone. Family, friends, even my wife, and of course to me. Olivia had to sign a general power of attorney so she could manage the store, which was our family's only source of income at that point. It's been almost 3 years now. My wife came to visit every so often, but I told her not to. I knew it was tough for her to manage the store on her own. She even thought about selling it, but I wouldn't allow that. The end of my sentence was approaching, and I was granted an early release, 3 months ahead of schedule. I was eager to surprise my son, so I asked my best friend to pick me up and take me home. I couldn't wait to see my family again. But when I got home, the house was empty. I figured Olivia must be at the store, so I took a shower, changed clothes, grabbed the car keys from the garage, and drove over. When I walked in, I was caught off guard. The sales staff were strangers, and the shelves were stocked with a lot of new items. And then, out from the warehouse, came Harper, the same woman who had been at the center of that mess all those years ago. She was shocked and so happy to see me that she threw her arms around me. Honestly, I was glad to see her too, but I couldn't help but ask, "Harper, is Olivia in the office?" Harper suddenly got all tense, looked down, and didn't answer. I was confused, but I walked past her and headed to my office. That's when the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. There, right on the desk, was my wife in a passionate kiss with some guy. They didn't even hear me walk in at first. I couldn't help myself. "Am I interrupting something?" I said loudly. They both jumped back in shock. I felt a surge of anger, so strong that I had to fight every instinct to lash out. But I had learned the hard way how not to miscalculate my strength. Olivia's explanation was ridiculous. Something about loneliness, about how she had been so sad being alone, that she just needed love. But that wasn't the only surprise waiting for me. She had somehow managed to blow through all the savings we had put together over the last few years. The money I thought was still there. She claimed it was all spent on running the store, But the business had gone downhill. Regular customers had switched to competitors. It seemed like, for those 3 years, she had been focused more on her personal life than keeping the business afloat. I won't lie, I was hit hard by everything I saw and heard. But despite everything, there was this part of me that was just so relieved to finally be home. I told her to go ahead and build her personal life however she saw fit. Just don't expect me to be part of it. So, I walked away. I filed for divorce and started all over again. After the trial, my son stayed with Olivia, but he later started spending most of his time with me. As for the store, I've already started to renovate it. I have restored old contacts, returned loyal customers, and progress is already noticeable. Meanwhile, Olivia moves from one relationship to another, but nothing works out for her. She'll probably be looking for someone like me for a long time.